Hello, welcome back to another episode. And sorry, we just had a bit of a challenge in terms of the no audio, but we got you back. So welcome back to another episode of Inspired Entrepreneur Podcast. This week, I'm tackling a topic that's been making waves in the property investment community, the new Renters' Rights Bill. What does it mean for landlords, property investors, and the housing market as a whole? We'll break it down the main changes, compare them to what's happening in other parts of the UK and see how this could shape the future of property investing. Let's get into it. So what is the Renters' Rights Bill and why it is important? Essentially, it is a bill that aims to give renters more protection and stability by introducing several reforms to tenancy law. But for landlords and investors, this bill could bring about some significant changes in how they manage their properties. So one of the key change is the abolition of the fixed term tenancies. That means the tenancies will now become periodic. This gives the tenant more security because they can stay in the property indefinitely. So as long as they follow the terms of the agreement that you obviously, you get them to sign, you make sure you do. But what happens when I need to sell or renovate my property within the new periodic tenancy? So this will be, the question that most of the landlords and investors ask themselves. With the new rule, tenancy will no longer have the fixed end date, meaning tenants can stay in your property indefinitely unless you have a legal reason to ask them to leave. If you need to sell the property or make major renovations, you can still ask the tenant to leave, but you will need to give a valid reason to follow up proper legal procedures. So, for example, if you plan to sell, you may need to give a tenant at least 2 months notice, depending on the situation. But this makes planning renovation or sell more difficult for landlords because the process of asking tenants to move may take longer than before, and it may cost you more as well, which could delay your renovation project by a few months as well. So, second key change in the new proposed bill is rent control and the future of rental increase. So the hot topic is the rent increase. Under the new bill, rent increases will be much more tightly regulated. Now rent can only be increased once a year, and the tenant has the right to challenge any increase they feel is unfair through a tribunal. And this is similar to what's been happening in Scotland for some time now. So in Scotland, under the Private Housing Tenancies Act from 2016, rent increases must align with inflation. And there is a cap in certain areas where the rents have spiraled out of control. So, for example, Scotland, not Scotland, Edinburgh. The rent pressure zones were, created to limit how fast the rent can rise, especially in high demand areas. So for property investors in England, this new restriction might mean slower growth in the rental income. This could particularly challenge, if you rely on increasing your rents to keep up with, rising costs. And if your mortgage rates increases, investor may need to reconsider their long-term rental, income strategy to accommodate for those changes that will come. So, how can I still achieve a strong return on investment if the rent increases are limited? Rent increases are now restricted to once a year or proposed, and tenancies can challenge rent hikes if they think they are too high. This makes it harder for landlords to raise the rents as frequently as they might like. But there are still ways to keep your investment profitable. So instead of relying on your regular rent increases, focus on adding value to the property in the first place. For example, you could upgrade the appliances, improve energy efficiency, or offer premium features like, high-speed internet, which should be a standards basic these days. But these improvements, can justify a higher rent when when you do increase it, and they may help keep tenants happy to reducing turnover. And I've done my education with other property mentors, and they were huge advocate for building a high quality, high end properties, so you can actually start, charging your rent, maximize that, because you're basically providing a higher end properties for your tenants, and your rents is already set up higher than all the other average in the area. So let's take another example. If your rental property has an old boiler, upgrading to modern energy efficient system could attract tenants willing to pay a little more, as they would save on energy bills, and this way you're keeping your property competitive without needing to raise rents aggressively. So this is more of a planning how you can, actually react to this new regulation, and what can you do in your property if you are considering to raise your rent. So third important point is let's compare this with Wales, for example. Let's compare the England Renters' Right Bill with Wales, where they introduced the Renting Home Act in 2016. So in Wales, tenants are given standard occupation contract, which offer more straightforward agreement between landlord and tenants. And the tenancies are designed to give renters stability with a minimum of 6 months notice period before a landlord can regain possession. So that's not easy for if you need to gain your property very quickly. But a lot of landlords in Wales have felt that this has tipped the balance too far in favor of tenants. And what do you think? Has it, or did or did not? There's been a growing frustration that it's becoming too difficult to manage tenancies effectively, and some landlords are even leaving the market. However, those reforms have provided a greater protection for tenants, ensuring that they're moved out without proper cause, because some landlords are not very genuine and they would like to just gain access to their property, do raise rents, and so in my opinion, this would promote greater standard of living, because if you know that you've got really bad property and you just bought something that needs a full renovation, you previously might be tempted just to put a really low budget to redecorate the property, but not actually fixing those issues. And that in time, in the next maybe year, 12 months, you will have to actually go in and do a full renovation and address all of the points that came at the survey purchasing time of your property, of this property. Then you might address them straight away, because you don't want to you don't want to be in that position in the middle of the tenancy. And let's now look how Wales already introduced a major reform for the tenants and landlords under the new act, which came in full force December 22, if I'm correct. So this act fundamentally changes how tenancy agreements work in Wales, and may give us some clues actually what's going to happen for the new rules in England, and how could impact the new rental market. In Wales, tenants are no longer referred as tenants; they are now called contract holders, and tenancy agreements are known as occupation contracts. So these occupation contracts have simplified the legal landscape, replacing over 20 different types of tenancy agreements. So what were those key changes in Wales? So extended notice period, property condition to fit for human habitation, joint contracts, and succession rights, and there was abandonment. So repossession without court order. Let's go into each one of them. So under this new law of the no fault eviction notice period was extended from 2 months to 6 months. This means that landlords are now have to give much more notice to tenants before they can ask them to leave, even with no fault has been committed. And comparing this in England, the Renters' Right Bill is set to abolish the Section 21 of no fault eviction, but landlords will likely face similar challenges as those in Wales, so where longer notice periods make it more difficult to regain possession of properties quickly. So could the extended notice period in Wales discourage landlords from entering the rental market, and how England will see a similar effects? It's a very good question. So let's watch this space. Wales introduced stricter safety requirements, meaning all rented properties must be fit for human habitation, FFHH. This includes ensuring that the property has a valid electrical safety certificates every 5 years for rented property, mains wired smoke alarms on every floor, carbon monoxide detectors in rooms with gas or solid fuel appliances, and it's just promoting the higher standards basically of living. But comparing with England, has a similar fitness requirements, but with the new bill, we may see more stringent enforcement similar to Wales, where penalties for non-compliance are quite severe. So joint contracts, and so once of the progressive changes in Wales is the flexibility around those joint contracts. So contract holders can be added or removed from a contract without needing to end the contract for everyone. So additionally, succession rights have been improved, meaning a spouse or partner can inherit the occupant's contract after the tenant's death, ensuring more stability for families. Because if you're buying a property and you do a simple buy-to-let, you're renting to your family, and if someone, unfortunately, due to their age or health, will pass on, then a contract will be success to someone else in line, so inherited essentially, making it simpler process. That actually could work really well for both, for tenant security and as well as landlord tenant security. And abandonment repossession without a court order. A unique provision in Wales is that a landlord can now reclaim abandoned properties without needing a court order. This makes the process faster and more efficient, as long as the landlord can provide a property has been abandoned through appropriate investigation. So you just need to prove, and there is a legal vehicles that you can do that. England may introduce a similar measures in the future, but currently landlords must navigate a more complicated legal process to reclaim abandoned properties, and that's not easy. Could introducing a streamlined process for abandoned properties in England be a good compromise for landlords facing extended eviction processes? Well, yes, for sure, in my opinion. So, impact of these changes in Wales. The reforms in Wales have generally been seen as a win for tenants. What's your opinion on this? Offering a greater security, clearer rights, and improved living conditions. But however, it's not without its challenges for landlords. The longer notice periods and stricter safety obligations have increased costs and decreased flexibility for many. For example, some landlords have chosen to just leave the market and introducing the number of available rents and in high demanding areas like Cardiff and Swansea. But this could be also a good opportunity for someone who wants to enter the market, because if someone's leaving the property markets, if some landlords may be just tired, or maybe their properties are not up to a current standard, and for these reasons they might be leaving the market. So you need to be a very you need to observe what's happening. What are the trends, and what are the high demanding areas? So you know your area will be a good advice, and so you can quickly jump on that trend and just grab those opportunities and purchase the properties as they come, because the old tired landlords might no longer wants to face the new challenges of the new renters bill that's is being proposed, and they just want to exit, and they've already done the property for about numbers of years, and they no longer want to play that game. I think that's exactly what it is. It's playing the game, and that's how you should actually look at this, the whole property investment, strategy. Is if you play the game and if you play for long period, long term, then you're in the right game. But if you think of getting into a property that is the get rich quick scheme, it's definitely not, especially under the new renters' right bill. So, pets. One of the more interesting changes in this bill is the tenants have rights to request permission to keep pets. Landlords will now need to provide a valid reason to refuse a tenant's request. So now, this could present a dilemma for landlords. On one hand, you've got tenants with pets that could lead to more wear and tear on the property, potentially increasing maintenance costs. On the other hand, allowing pets could open up a new market. So, as many tenants are willing to pay a premium for a pet-friendly accommodations, what's your opinion on this? Would you consider a pet-friendly accommodation, or would you not be willing to accommodate the pets because of the increased cost in maintenance? That's a good point there. So let me know what you think. What's your opinion? And is it actually worth adjusting your properties to become pet-friendly, or will it potentially damage and outweigh the benefits? For example, if you allow your tenant to have a dog, it could, you could replace carpets areas with vinyl or laminate flooring, which just keeps it easy to maintain the floor and cleanliness, which is easier, obviously, and is less likely to be damaged. But this way, you're protecting your property while attracting pet owners that might be willing to pay a higher rent, and essentially, that's how you could actually benefiting from these changes. Stricter penalties for unlawful eviction. That's a very good point in the new bill. So under the new renters' right bill, penalties for unlawful eviction will become much tougher. If a landlord illegally evicts a tenant, they could face fines up to £7,000. This is a significant increase, and showing how serious the government is about protecting the tenant rights. In Scotland, similar penalties have been in place for years, and landlords who breach the rules face strict fines. This could be a wake-up call for landlords in England to become more cautious and through in following legal procedures. In Edinburgh, a landlord who unlawfully evict a tenant without following the proper legal protocols face a fine over £5,000. These penalties are not just limited to a large-scale landlords, but also affect small property owners who may not have access to a legal teams to navigate through these rules. So just watch out, be careful, and know what you're doing. Future of property investment, market exit, or is it an opportunity? What do you think? Now let's talk about the bigger picture. What do these changes mean for a future of property investing? Are we going to see a mass exit of landlords from a rental market due to increased regulations? Or will these changes actually, simplify and simply just weed out, the less serious investors and create opportunities for more professional landlords? I think both, but in Scotland, where they've introduced very similar rules, there has been a lot of concerns that stricter regulations could reduce the number of rental properties, driving up rents, and in the long run, due to a lack of supply. Similarly, in England, if landlords feel they are being squeezed out of the red tape, we could see fewer rental properties, creating an imbalance between supply and demand. However, professional landlords who adapt to these changes, those who can offer well-maintained, compliant properties, could see an increased demand from tenancy, seeking security. This could create a new opportunity for investors who are willing to work within a new legal framework. So if you know what you're doing, if you know who's your ideal tenant, that's actually the point number one when you're buying a property. If you know your ideal tenant, if you know the areas of high demand, and you are only, and that's only, creating properties with the high standards, co-living spaces, with perhaps easily maintainable surfaces such as laminated floors or vinyl floors, so they could become easily pet friendly homes, if that's the strategy of the simple buy to let. Then you could definitely benefit from these changes, because that will just clear the market from less professional accidental landlords who don't really understand the approach. They don't understand that actually you've got another spare property which you put it on the market, rent it, and you want to make sure that you provide a good living spaces for other families and tenants who are looking for those properties. So are they rent controls, are the control measure pushing the investors out of the market? Rent controls measures like limiting rent increases could make some landlords rethink their investments. But if investors feel they can't raise rents to keep up with rising costs, such as maintenance, mortgage, interest rates, these may choose to sell their properties and invest elsewhere, in a stock market or crypto or other opportunities. So, however, for professional landlords, as I said, with long-term strategies, and I'll be really, focusing on this long-term strategy, these changes may not be a deal breaker at all. They can adapt by offering better maintained properties and, keep it really simple. And they will focus on a tenant retention, which just reduces the vacancy period and turnover costs. So, that's. I wonder, what's your opinion about the new renters bill? Is it a yay or a nay? Please leave the comments. I would be, I'm quite keen to see what's your opinion about this. But that's wrap ups today's episode on the renters' right bill, and it is important for our landlords and property investors. We've covered everything from rent control, tenant rights, and how this bill compares to new rules in Scotland and Wales. And remember, while these changes might seem daunting, they also refer opportunities to those willing to adapt. And as always, thank you for tuning, to the Inspired Entrepreneur podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. And from next week, we are going to be streaming live on YouTube, and I will post the link on all my social media so you can find the podcast. We're actually taking this to the next level slowly. It takes some time. But as I'm going and learning all this, technical aspect of running the podcasts, is ever challenging, and I always learn something new. But it's been great as always to have you with me today, Sunday morning. I'll keep the updates as I'm learning everything that comes forward, and share my experience and expertise of running a business. And this is the new business of property investing. And I wish you every success, and see you next week, 9 a.m. Sunday morning. Thank you so much.